oil on it. The front third of the barn was lit now, and he saw arcane machinery ranked up but rotting, blades blooming corrosion. There was nothing small enough to use as a weapon, nothing he could get his hands on without being seen. He wanted to be at home. He wanted his warm bed and his warm girlfriend and the familiar glow of the streetlight coming through the curtains she made him buy in IKEA. He wanted to close his eyes and roll over and press his face into her hair. A rat darted across his foot, escaping from the pig pen. The animals were rootling in the straw, snorting, impatient for the food they couldn't find, knowing it was what they had been brought in for. He stumbled, aware of voices now, loud, coming closer, and the sound of a rifle bolt ramming home. Then he was running, across the yard, heading for the unfamiliar woodland looming in the distance. He vaulted the post and rail fence as a gunshot rang out and dropped automatically onto his knees. Behind him, dogs were snarling, and he heard a barked command as they were released. He ran across the uneven field, legs pumping and his heart hammering. He sucked down the night air, knowing he was crying, knowing the divine intervention he was begging for wouldn't come. He kept running, zigzagging as shots ripped past him. The gibbous moon slipped behind a cloud, and he ran on faster, knowing they would have night sights, that even in the woods he was as good as dead. The field rose up to the margin of the wood, and he threw himself across the narrow ditch at the perimeter. The dogs were almost on him, 50 or 60 yards away. He could see their eyes in the moonlight, 2 massive grey lurchers. Behind them, a pickup was bouncing over the grassland, coming up slow enough that the man in the back could brace himself against the cab to shoot. He moved into the woods, stumbling over the twisted roots, the rocks he couldn't see until he was on them. This was it. A bullet whistled past his head, and he ducked behind a stump, dropping down onto his haunches. There was nowhere left to go now. They would hunt him down even if he reached the road. He could get to the village and it wouldn't matter. False dawn was falling. The streets would be deserted, and no one came outside for gunshots in places like this. It would be rabbits or deer, some stupid bastard who probably deserved it. He swore at the sky and pushed on. Wednesday, 4 days earlier. Chapter 1. Shreds of smoke lingered between the close-packed terraces on Highbury Street. Not much escaped from there. It was a narrow, congested road, cars parked both sides, barely enough room for the fire engine to squeeze between them. It was easing out as D.I. Zigic turned off Lincoln Road and his brakes bit a couple of inches from the high black bumper. The driver threw his hands up. "Where am I going to go?" Zigic backed onto a wedge of tarmac between the Hand and Heart pub and the garage next door. Lockdown roller shutters emblazoned with a red English Nationalist League tag. It was the third new one he'd seen this week, all within the few dozen streets which comprised New England, or as the locals were calling it these days, Englandistan, a bustling suburb just north of the city centre and home to the vast majority of Peterborough's migrant workers. Highbury Street had been predominantly Polish 5 years ago, when he was first put in charge of the Hate Crimes Unit. Plenty of jobs around back then, and the property market flooded with cheap money. The Poles moved up and on, bought houses in Paston and Westwood, gentrified the 1970s ghettos they were when he was a kid, opened supermarkets and beauty salons, turned the slums into suburbs. Now, Highbury Street was more mixed, Bulgarians and Estonians, a Slovenian couple he knew from their son getting glassed on the embankment over Christmas. Nice kid, but the ones on the receiving end usually were. Zigic got out of the car and buttoned his parka up to his chin, watching a woman retreat from the upstairs window of the